first piece of crazy dumb advice that will skyrocket your happiness and mental health scores overnight is you can become 10 times more creative and productive if you replace feed scrolling time with staring at walls. This is no joke. I like this one. Not in the context of becoming more productive, because I don't actually like the word productive, and we're talking about mental health and being happier, so how does this all relate? I mean, yeah, it will increase your productivity if you stare at a wall. I fundamentally believe that we are all just overwhelmed. We have so much information coming at our senses, left, right, up, down and centre, from the timelines that we're scrolling, the news articles that we get subtly thrown at us, the conversations that we have with 10 billion different types of people in our life. All of this information is bombarding our brain, so our brains aren't really switching off anymore. There's a brilliant book called Why Doing Nothing Can Change Your Life, and this is what it's all about. The neuroscience of it is when your brain is active, obviously it's active and it's doing stuff and it's trying to process that information, but it processes that information even better when you activate something called the default mode network in your brain, which is essentially like your brain kind of having a nap but not really going to sleep, so it's just has a bit of peace and quiet to absorb the things that go on throughout the day, the pieces of information you absorb. Oh, that conversation you had in the morning, oh, you stumbled in your, or something that happened to me this morning, which was I had a watermelon on the side, and because it was in the sun, it fully exploded just everywhere. So when I activate my default mode network, I can process, that rather traumatic experience. You need to switch off. Staring at a wall is one way to do it. The other day I was in the garden and it was about 8 o'clock and I had worked the whole day and I was reading and I was writing loads of stuff, but I was on a chair and I was just looking at the sky. It was nice and blue. And for the first time, crap you not, in about 2 years, I felt peace. And I felt as if my brain could actually slow down. We need digestion time. Think about food. You digest food, you understand that after a big meal, you're going to have to sit there and be, big fat goblin and let it process through your belly. I was calling all of us big fat goblins, by the way, not just you. It's the same with our brains. We need time to be looking at stuff, absorbing information, but we also need time to switch off, which is why staring at walls is a great way to do it. I like coming out in nature. I've realised that, so this woods is about 10-minute walk from the house. I come here and I just sit sometimes. Sometimes I bring a book, but that's kind of defeating the point. Sometimes I just sit. So if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, you need more nothing. 5 to 10 minutes of just sitting there, looking out the window, doing nothing. And that will let your brain's default mode network digest the experiences that have gone on. Even when it's actively thinking, when you're resting, yes, that's a good sign. Let it happen. Yeah, go about it in that way. Okay, point number 2. This is nice. We're just chilling. I've got a mate. Just lost all my testosterone drinking out of a straw. Second one. My life got a lot better when I viewed every problem as a skill issue. Out of shape, skill issue. Ugly bank account, skill issue. Anxious thoughts, skill issue. I affirmed to myself these would go away if I got better, and magically they did once I did. Diagnosis, skill issue. When I read this for the first time, part of me thought, you know what? I'm not really vibing with that. But then I looked at it a little bit more and I thought, regardless of whether something actually is a skill issue, it's optimistic to see it as a skill issue, because if it is a skill issue, you can improve the skill. You can learn a new language if you can't speak it. You can learn how to do a certain exercise in the gym if you don't know how. You can learn social skills. You can learn all of, most things, coding. All of these things are skills. So why do we see it differently with our mental health and our ability to emotionally regulate, for example? It's the same. It's a skill issue. So where to go in order to improve your skills? Books, resources online, articles. if you are in a state right now where you have a particular mental health problem, and I don't mean, obviously, mental illness, go and see a professional if you've been diagnosed. What I mean is, if you have a particular problem you're facing right now, out of nowhere, you're feeling more anxious and you don't know how to regulate your anxiety, or you struggle to emotionally regulate when in relationships, or you're struggling a lot with procrastination, use your hunter-gatherer brain to go on a search and a hunt for that information in the form of books. I remember when I was 17 and I was in school, there was this one girl in school who really, really struggled with anxiety. I think around that time, it was an interesting thing in my school. Not a lot, but there was, as soon as we turned 17, it was as if everyone got quite anxious. Obviously, hormones are changing and puberty and all that. But I remember there was this one girl, she visibly struggled with anxiety, and it became a thing very quickly, that everyone kind of learned that she struggled with it, and she used to get really anxious, and it was horrible because, especially for her, and we was her friend, so, me and all my other friends, so we wanted to help her. And I remember I walked home with her one day, and she was telling me about it and how she was really struggling. And I remember I said, why don't you read some books about anxiety? But her reaction was, I'm not going to read a book about anxiety. And in the moment, obviously, she didn't want a solution. She probably just wanted me to hear her out and be a shoulder or to be two ears to speak to. But her reaction has always stuck with me, because I thought, well, why wouldn't you? If you've got a problem that you're dealing with, go and learn about it. And that's my advice to you in this second point. Go read up on it, because you'll find that most of the things you struggle with mentally are a consequence of a lack of information. Because once you start to understand a little bit more, in my experience, I can tell you from my experience, once I started to read about neuroscience and psychology and mental health for the first time when I was about on and off between 18 and 20, but then seriously when I was 21, so many things made sense. And I had so much more compassion towards myself, which is why I love reading about neuroscience, because if I can understand why we act in a certain way, because of this brain region, and when, for example, depression itself is a little bit of a wonky communication between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. When I read that from the book The Upward Spiral by Alex Korb, I could suddenly see what was happening in depressive spirals of my life, and I was realizing, interesting. It's just a little bit of a miscommunication between these two things, and this is what I need to do next. So, yeah, read, I would say. Information is readily available on the internet. Kind of contradicts the first point. Just give yourself a little break once you do the learning, okay? Right. Next one. A step backwards is still part of the dance. Oof. Yeah. It really is. I love dancing salsa, and obviously, well, not obviously, because, some people don't dance. Yeah, I just think about so many times in the dance when you do have to go backwards a little bit, and it's the same in life. Another saying is, in order to shoot an arrow, you have to pull it backwards. Sometimes you have to move back in with your parents to figure out the next move. Sometimes you have to feel like you're back at square one again after ending a relationship and thinking, oh, bloody hell, my past identity is gone with that relationship. Now I just need to rebuild. Sometimes a step backwards is still part of the dance. Or not sometimes, it is part of the dance. Fourth one, sorry. This one's a bit interesting. My parents have a kind of praxis, which sounds like an insult where I'm from. I don't know what praxis means, but anyway, we'll get it from the context. My parents have a kind of praxis where they approach chores or labour as having near zero cost. Time will pass anyway, so you might as well spend it improving your dinner, your home, your life. I respect it a lot. It inspires me. This week I will try to make this attitude my own. Then a comment underneath from Shannon. God knows who Shannon is. Once I started living this way, life got exponentially better. I don't view time in the same. and I rarely think of the future except to scan my calendar in a preparatory manner. It's helped me be more fully present, and I've developed a body sense that alerts me when I'm off kilter. Thanks, Shannon. Besides the time that is necessary for you to take a break and activate your default mode network, this idea is a bit of an interesting one because I've never thought about it this way. Life, yeah. Imagining your downtime. I've got nothing to do. Might as well improve my fridge layout. Isn't this just boredom? Boredom is... the best way to think about boredom is an analogy I got from the book The Comfort Crisis. And he speaks about the evolution, the guy who wrote the book is called Michael Easter, and he speaks about the evolutionary purpose of boredom. Now, right, to explain it, imagine we have two cavemen standing by a bush. And there's berries all over the bush, but not an infinite amount, you know. After you pick 50 berries, the bush will go. Oh, there'll be no more berries. Now, one caveman has the ability to get bored, but the other man doesn't. So caveman 1, the one who can get bored, picks a few berries, you know, he puts them in a little caveman basket and then waddles off by the time he's got about 30 because he's getting bored of all this picking. But the other caveman keeps going and doesn't stop until, you know, he's gone on to the next bush and the next bush. What's the result? Well, caveman 1 who could get bored has berries, walked home, speared a little antelope on the way home. Now he has meat, berries, walked back, spent his time thinking about how he can improve his relationship with his neighbour, so reciprocity is a bit more free-flowing in the village. Boom. His family now have meat, berries and better relationships around them. The other caveman returns back to the village with just berries. The evolutionary purpose of boredom not only is to allow you to digest what's going on in your life with the default mode network, but also to allow yourself the space to creatively imagine how to improve things and then act on them. And that's what I think this piece of advice is alluding to here. Not allowing yourself to be bored is robbing you of the creativity necessary to improve your life in cool ways, not in optimized, productive, you know, annoying influencers ways, but yeah, in cool ways. All right, next one. You're not overwhelmed, you're just realising what real effort looks like. Whew. Yeah, I thought about this, I included this one in the context of upward spiralling in your life. You know those times where maybe you start in the gym for the first time, or you know, you've just started working on that project, or you're halfway through it, you're studying, and things are hard. Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes things are hard. And this is what I included as a mindset shift in the video I uploaded, how to make doing hard things easier than scrolling YouTube. Things are hard. And when you admit things are hard, you stop having to wrestle with the expectation that they should be easy, and in a funny roundabout way, things become easier. If you go to the gym and you think, oh yeah, working out is quite hard, that's why most people don't do it. Or if you sit down and set the timer to do an hour of deep focused work of writing, for example, you want to write more essays, but 20 minutes in you're thinking, oh, this is hard. You have two paths. One, this is hard and it shouldn't be, so I'm going to quit. Or, yeah, well, wake up, this is hard. Life gets so much easier when you realise things are hard, but that isn't an adequate reason to not do them. Things are just hard, and that's the price you pay for becoming someone capable of someone capable of doing hard things. You know, as the Taoist saying, I keep clicking the pen, as the Taoist saying goes, the sage always does hard things, so things aren't hard. Things are just hard. Pause. Right, next one. Growing up is understanding that eventually your life stops being about... Growing up is about understanding that eventually your life stops being about how you were raised and starts being about the way you choose to live. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of... You know, we all have different childhoods. Oh, there's that bottle of piss that I saw in another video. I'll go get it in a minute. We all have different childhoods. We all have reasons to be annoyed and see patterns within ourselves, you know, behavioural patterns, and think, oh, well, that clearly happened because my parents did this when I was younger, or my dad did this when I was younger, or my mum did this when I was younger, or this happened in school. Yes. Yes. But you get to choose now the actions you want to take in respect to the circumstances you find yourself in. Because obviously you can't do everything, but you have I think what this is getting at is you have more freedom over the past than you think. Of course, it's worth mentioning here, PTSD, childhood trauma, like severe childhood trauma, runs a lot deeper, in which case therapy is much more helpful with that. Nevertheless, you do have a lot more freedom over the relationship you build with the past. Meaning you have the choice to decide whether you look into it, whether you think it's important, whether it's important and has an effect on who you are, but you're not going to let that deter you from being the person you want to be now because you're an adult. The trouble we run into as human beings is it's very seductive to spin stories out of life. I am this way because of this. This happened because of this. Most of the time things just happen. And then the brain wants consistency, and it wants to create an air of... it wants to create a stable ground of predictability and certainty in life, so it conjures these stories in order to form patterns between things that are probably otherwise not related. And you can stay with those stories, but the problem is your brain isn't always optimizing for what's 100% accurate from those stories. So sometimes you just drop stories altogether and realize that your brain's always going to try and form them. This happened because of this. I am this way because of that. My childhood shows up today as this. Sometimes, yes, those stories can be more accurate than others, but is it helping you? I'm not, again, asking a genuine question, not being a twat. Is it helping you? I think it's probably not helping you if that story doesn't move you towards being able to act now, and doesn't move you towards self-compassion now. Looking back on your past is helpful because you can, or in one sense, because it offers you that self-compassion to think, oh wow, yeah, I've been acting out this pattern because when I was young I was taught to believe this. You know, for example, I act out the pattern of avoiding conflict because when I was young I was taught to believe that conflict threatens connection. So, you know, well, I'm not going to have a go at myself for being a people pleaser. I don't want to be a people pleaser anymore. I can understand the origin story of it, but I'm not going to stay there. I'm following rules that don't exist anymore, and I don't want to keep conjuring the story that I'm doomed to act this way because of the past. The past had an influence on who I was yesterday and who I was a week ago and a year ago, but from now, with my awareness of the past, I get to choose how I want to show up differently. I think that's a lot more empowering, if I'm honest. Okay, a few more. Speaking of relationships, let's branch into this one, because we can't talk about mental health without talking about relationships. Sometimes your mental health suffers because you're in a tricky one, or you're struggling to trust people, in which case, from Ernest Hemingway, the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. Oh, anyone who's been betrayed, screwed over, cheated on, slapped round the face with, I don't know, anyone who's been betrayed will hear that and think, oh, really? But it is true. It is true. The only way to tell whether someone is trustworthy is to give them the opportunity to step into that trust or not. In which case, there's a lot of power, personal power, you know, to realise that if someone has screwed you over, a friend, a partner, family member, they were probably always going to do it. Not specifically as if when they first met you they were conjuring, you know, wiggling their fingers planning that betrayal, but it's just revealed who they are. They are that type of person, in which case the betrayal and the lack of trust, the transgression, is a huge favour. I believe personally in a one-strike policy for very big betrayals, of course, and even little ones. If someone shows themselves to lie in some way or put our connection in jeopardy for self-gain, I'm very much of the mindset, okay, I'm going to try and understand, I'm going to try and be compassionate, I'm going to forgive because I want to set myself free and I don't want to be a prisoner to a grudge. But you know, I gave you the chance. Best if we move on. And there's no harm in that. In a karmic sense, you know, just look, I gave you a chance, I opened myself up to you, I feel a little bit whatever, I'm just going to move on. But you wouldn't have been able to realise if you hadn't have given the opportunity for them to step into that trust. And this is the thing that we all face with relationships, especially romantic relationships. Friendships as well, but I think friendships is a little bit different. Romantic relationships feel a lot more emotionally deep because, of course, the flow of love is there. And attraction, depending on what friends you have. But yeah, it is the risk that we all run. I'm admitting that I'm attracted to you and I want to pursue something with you, and in that pursuit, you're a human being and I can't control you. No matter how much vetting, you know, you try to do of someone, their past, who are they before they met me? What about their other relationships? What about this? What about that? Who are they? How do they act in this situation? All of the maybe necessary things you need to do. But even if you have the perfect person with the perfect track record in front of you, guess what? They are a human being and they can still change, which is the threatening thing that we all face when we step into a relationship. But the alternative is never letting anyone into your life or close enough to potentially hurt you. So it is a choice, and it's a choice I would 100% understand if you weren't willing to make. Okay, a few more. Do it scared, do it alone are all great tips, but my biggest takeaway from therapy is to do it messy. This is especially true if you're getting out of a burnout, which I experience often. Literally just do it messy. You don't need to pick the perfect trail to walk, the perfect playlist to listen to, whatever the bloody hell it is. You don't need to have a meticulous to-do list and wake up at the exact time you planned and drink the exact amount of water you planned to drink. Like, the biggest thing for people like me to remember is sometimes it's okay to do it messy. Put on a random YouTube workout and just get it done in sweats. Do 5 minutes of a daunting task and go from there. Sometimes just getting up is a win during intense burnouts or depressive funks. Literally just do it messy. Ooh, yeah, takeaway there. Doing it messy is better than not doing it at all. I think that's self-explanatory. A few more, 3 more. This is free advice from an expensive psychologist. If you're an anxious person, do everything for fun. Go to a job interview for fun. Submit documents for fun. Start a blog for fun. Anxiety feeds on importance. Don't make everything a matter of life or death. Whoa. 1000%. I ran a cohort. A cohort is an online community to test the course that I'm working on now, or the program that I'm working on now for social skills. I ran it in February, so the 15th of February to the 15th of March, and there was 20 of us in there, 20 subscribers. I just launched it to the newsletter because I didn't want to, I didn't launch it to you guys yet on YouTube, because I wanted to test whether the idea was actually legit of what I'm building the program around, which, by the way, is something that goes much deeper than any social skills tip. But anyway, I'll let you guys know when it's ready. It's ready soon. I ran an online community helping people through social hesitation, essentially, and how it was largely focused on how to initiate conversations with strangers, step into not just that, but overall how to step into social moments that you are feeling anxious towards and hesitating. And one of the ideas that we gleaned from a group call, shouts out Daniel and Jordan, you guys helped me realise this, is everything is a rehearsal. One of the guys who's become a good friend, Jordan, in the community, was doing theatre at the time, and it was a perfect bridge into, or it was a perfect bridge to connect the idea of social anxiety and theatre rehearsal. And the idea I presented is, imagine if you're an actor and you're rehearsing your lines and your play in front of, your team, or just one person in the audience. How anxious would you be? Well, not that anxious, because it's just a rehearsal and you're allowed to mess up. Now imagine how anxious you would be if you're on the night of the performance. Yeah, you've done all the prep and the rehearsals, but you're now performing in front of 3,000 people. You would feel much more anxious before stepping out on stage. Why? Because the importance is different. So this is what a lot of people with social anxiety, myself included, I wouldn't say I have social anxiety, but I have had it and overcome it, which is why I'm building the course, to share what I know, even though the course isn't just about social anxiety. Anyway, I'll reveal it later. When I was 17, 18, 19, and I would get very socially anxious, I realised this because I would always see the moment of speaking to that attractive stranger, sparking up a conversation with that guy my age who could be a cool friend, travelling alone. These things felt really important, and that's what was making my knees wobble whenever I would go and step into doing them, because I put them on such a high pedestal. But the moment I started to strip away some of that self-imposed importance on the tasks and the actions and the meaningful moments, yes, I still felt scared to do some things, but my God, when something is fun and you're just approaching it with it's just a rehearsal, it's not the actual thing, it's not the performance, I just want to see. When you just step into the moment with that mindset, it's so much easier. And an example is, I hesitated on going to salsa classes for probably about 2 years after I first realised it was something that I wanted to do, because I was mentally preparing an image of an angry mob waiting for me to just shout their words of embarrassment when I would clearly mess up and do the first moves, because I'd never danced before. But when I actually went to my first salsa class in London about 2 years ago, I remember what actually helped me walk through the door was, it's just a dance class. Do it for fun. Like, I really enjoyed dancing alone, so I thought, I'm going to go. It's fun. I'm just going to have fun. I really like this idea. Really, really like it. Maybe we can brainstorm it a little bit more in the comments and make a video on it. Okay, 2 more. Going to leave you with this tonight. The best thing you can do for yourself is actively increase your surface area for luck to hit you. Go outside, travel more, go to new what? Kate's. Go to new museums, events, take a new route home, go for hikes, see cities, countrysides, take your notebook, speak to people, ask questions, start businesses, go on more side quests. You can literally just do things. And the more you do, the more serendipity and synchronicity will find you. Serendipity means luck. This is literally the main rule of life. Whenever you feel too much of an emotion, just go outside and find a new place, and new emotions will find you too. Brilliant idea. When you step into new action, which is the main way to change your identity and how you view yourself, something shows up in response to that new action called companion emotions. And I say that to reference that last part of just go to a new place and the new emotions will find you. That's what the new emotions are called. Yeah, increase your surface area for luck. It's a funny thing. I realised about a year and a half ago, after spending a period of a few months in isolation just working, I went out to London one day. I remember I told my mum about it, and I came back and I had this really good conversation with this woman behind a counter in Holland and Barrett, and I met this other person. I met my Colombian friend and spent the day just in London. I came back and I told my mum about it. I remember I was talking to her. I was like, oh, it was so good. It was such a good day. And she said something funny. She was like, oh yeah, you've realised people do exist. Before I went to Mexico, there's a little place in London called Elephant and Castle. It's just like a little borough, like a neighbourhood. And there's lots of Latino restaurants there. And I love Latin culture, so I went there. And there was a Colombian place, and I just sat in there, ordered an arepa, sat down, ate it, had like 3 conversations with 4 different Colombian people, one of whom then became my friend, who I just mentioned. Ended up going to a salsa class with him. It just had a great moment of conversation. And none of that would have been possible if I never went into that shop and ordered a Colombian arepa. Venezuelans, you'll probably be arguing that it's Venezuelan, but nevertheless, if I would have just ordered Colombian food, that would have never have happened. You have to put yourself in the positions for luck to happen. And this relates to mental health, because if we talk about depression, the tricky thing is with depression and feeling low in life is it depletes, or well, you're not in a state of energy. So you withdraw from doing the things that actually help you get something out of life, which is why sometimes you just have to force yourself. And I know that's the last thing you want to hear when you have low energy, but if you think about it logically, depression is a loop. You feel bad, so you withdraw from the world, and then you reinforce behaviours that soothe you from having to face the world and go out and speak to people and do creative things and do your hobbies. All of which means that the natural satisfaction you get from having a conversation with someone, meeting someone new, or doing your hobbies, creatively working on something, all of those emotions go, because you're not doing those things. So you're negatively reinforced to escape the world rather than move into it, which is why you need to move forward into the things that you know give you a sense of joy and meaning in life, in order for you to get something out of life when you're in a state of low mood. It's the hardest thing in the world to feel low and realise, oh, you know what, maybe if I do some of the things that usually brought me joy, I'll get some of those emotions back. It's really hard the first day you get back into working out after having a bit of a low period and not training, or forcing yourself to go out and be social and think, you know, I've been isolated for God knows how long. Having a conversation and looking people in the eye is hard. But if you just stay with the momentum of those things, soon they'll become easy again. Soon you'll return to how you felt when you was doing those things before this low period. And then you'll get the companion emotions from those actions. So yeah. Side quests. Okay, last one. You cannot force fruit in a season meant for roots. Yeah. I put this one in because sometimes in life, when you're in that state of feeling low, like I just said, the first few days of trying to get back into rhythm are hell. and you don't really see any rewards. You go out, you speak to people, you feel the same as you felt. You go to the gym, it was a horrible workout and you feel rusty. You get back into work, your mind's a mess, you can't focus. You get back into your hobbies of whatever it is, pottery, jiu-jitsu, or whatever you usually like to do, and you just think, oh, I've just lost it. Don't frame it as a loss when stepping back into momentum from nothing feels painful. Frame it as you are planting roots that you're not going to see the fruits of unless you keep going. So yeah. Sometimes you just got to understand that you just got to keep going with your routine, keep going with your stability and consistency, and then eventually the companion emotions will show up, because sometimes they don't show up straight away. Yeah, cool. All right, I like this. I got the ideas from Pinterest and I thought, why not share them? I was in the woods, just recorded a video about self-betrayal and wanted something a bit lighter. All right, thank you for your time and attention. Stay disciplined, playful and dangerous. Adios, muchachos y muchachas. Also, if you like this style of video, let me know. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more. We can do ones related to social skills. I was even thinking about doing a community post and just asking you guys, you know, what are your best mental health tips, and then just doing this version of it and reading out the best comments. So maybe we'll do that soon. All right, in a bit. Bye.